Good morning. If you're joining us right now, we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Thanks everyone for jumping on, and give us about 2 minutes and we'll get the program started as we wait for others to join in. Just logging on. We're just giving everyone a few minutes to join in, and then we'll get started. Well, good morning, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce, also representing the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. And today's the kickoff of our AI webinar series. We know for every business, you're talking about how do I integrate AI into the work that I do. Probably many of you are far along. Others are just starting to scratch the surface and see where it can be a good fit. And really understanding that we see the value of AI, but how do we make it work for each of our businesses and organizations is really the critical jump that I know we're all trying to make and continually improve on as the technology continues to improve. So we're excited at the Chamber to bring this AI webinar series in part because there's just so much information that is out there. And so we're able to go out to some of our really great members who are strong in this area and bring them in to be able to speak with all of you. So today, we're starting off with AI-powered sales, Elevate, Engage, Excel. We're really pleased to have Michael McCarthy, who is Senior Director of AI, Sales, and Business Solutions for Hearst, Connecticut Media Group. So Michael, thank you so much for being here and being the kickoff of our webinar series. Really excited to hear what you have today.
Well, thank you so much, Garrett. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on. I know AI is almost in the news cycle with every other story that you see. It's that buzzworthy and that trendy. Um, and what I tell people right now is the only constant in life is change. And the number one thing that we all have to be is adaptable. So I'm going to break down what these changes are and kind of right size them for our local market. And I say our local market because I'm sitting here with you in Trumbull, Connecticut right now. I was raised in Fairfield and I live and breathe this part of the country. So I really do look forward to working with you, and I really appreciate the chamber bringing me in. So with that, I'll pull up my presentation and we'll be underway. And I will save time at the end for Q&A. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and hopefully my course content can answer some of those as we work through it. But I will make myself available for any specific or nuanced questions that you might have. So a little bit about myself. I was not always in the tech industry. I'm not an AI guy by trade or by college degree. I actually have a degree in history. And I find that liberal arts and being able to compose your thoughts and write and really work with these systems is powerful. If you've ever heard some of these tech leaders speak, the new coding language and the developing language is English, right? So we don't realize it, but the barrier for breakthroughs and development and new revenue streams, it's only in your imagination. You can create whatever you want now. So when I'm talking about my transformation from where I was as a sales leader at Hearst, Connecticut Media Group, we had an office right down in Norwalk. I was building tools that help my team do better. And you might kind of really empathize with this story, but I had sales reps that would work till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and they just felt like they couldn't turn it off. And I wanted to build systems that increase their efficiency as well as their effectiveness in getting the job done so they could free themselves up to live life and engage with their customers. And I feel like we are at that tipping point where the technology is rounding the corner or if you know how to leverage it, it's totally game changing for the better. Now, as you can see on the 3 bullet points, I'm actually part of a group that I'm really excited about and honored to be part of. But I was one of the founding members of OpenAI's Enterprise Champion Network. Uh, it's an international group that's pretty close knit, but I'm with organizations like Harvard, MIT, Ford, Hearst. Of course, I'm the representative for Hearst Media overall. And they saw what we were doing on the sales side, and this was back in 2023 and 2024. And we kind of really proved that business people and people with business acumen have a space in this tech world. And I'm going to introduce some of my journey and make it applicable and actionable for you. So when we look at Hearst Connecticut Media Group as just an organization, an institution, and I mean institution, we have been around over a century. And I could probably spend the 45 minutes of our webinar just listing the properties that Hearst Connecticut Media Group has, but New Haven Register and CT Post, CT Insider, Fairfield Citizen, when I grew up, it was always on my driveway every single day. And this is the local trust and the local authority that is actually becoming paramount in this new AI era. As we'll talk about in a few instances, or moments when the degree of extreme goes to one direction, it's almost like a pendulum. The pendulum will come back. And we're finding that people are already starting to tune out AI generated content and they're becoming sick of it. And authoritative, human generated, local, and trustworthy content is winning, not just with readers and people, but with Google and the new algorithms. One of the newest algorithms was just changed back in December. It was part of Google's core update. And they really focused on authoritative trust signals. That was the main change that they did. And we'll talk about how do you build this with your content and go-to-market strategy so you can really indicate that you are a trustworthy, authoritative business. And Hearst Connecticut Media Group is part of a larger organization, Hearst Media, which owns brands such as Cosmopolitan, Men's Health, Women's Health, Oprah Magazine. So a very large group, and we have a lot of infrastructure behind us that allows us to leverage AI and machine learning within the tools we use on a local level. So that's us as we fit into this local framework. Now, when we look at Connecticut as a whole, I love this state because we're always punching above our weight. Connecticut is the third most prevalent state for small to medium business AI adoption. So we are trying, we are applying, but when the rubber meets the road, 73% of SMBs are unsure how to proceed. And that can be because, one, you're running your business and your day and your time is necessarily just spent. And it's really hard to carve out time to learn new tools or figure out new modalities of how you should be running your business. And two is we haven't seen any clear signals or goalposts on where should we be moving with focus and with efficiency. So hopefully by the end of this session, you have at least one or two things that you can start doing tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday that help you move in the right direction and you don't become part of the 73%. So the glaring issue, and it's probably the reason that you registered for this event, but quick show of hands for those out in the audience, but how has your website changed in the last 6 months? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying static, right? You can always write in the Q&A and just kind of talk about what are the trends that you're seeing, right? Because the change is happening fast. So as you're working through that, and there's definitive reasons that this has happened, and I think everyone has seen it. But what we're calling this now, this kind of what's leading to the symptom of traffic declines on websites, are the disappearing middle. So this is an example of what an AI overview, and you've probably seen it if you're on Google, what they're doing at the top of the search engine results page. Historically, an old SEO was we need to optimize keywords and content on our sites to make sure that we are within those 10 blue links the higher up, the better, right? We have a premium on that number one spot. Well, that is not totally worthless, but it's much diminished in terms of power and pull through for your business. So when the AI overviews actually started becoming integrated into Google's platform, businesses found and websites found that the organic click through rate drops by 61%. So, how do you navigate that, right? One, you need to serve in the organic, or you need to serve in the search engine AI generated overview. And this is the Google example. I'm sure you're familiar with ChatGPT search and Perplexity and Gemini and all these other tools. Same principles apply there, right? We'll talk through the strategy. It gets rewarded the same way across all of those domains. And the other is this isn't an advertising pitch, but paid SEM, it still does get clicks, and they're changing the dynamic of how they're going to be positioning SEM, where it's going to now fit within these AI summaries. So picture kind of the quantity versus quality discussion, where you were bidding for as many clicks as possible. Now you're bidding for the most qualitative click possible because people have had a conversation and they've self-vetted themselves as a high quality lead for your business within that conversation funnel. So when they do click that ad, they're more likely to convert on your site. So that is something to be paying attention to, but it's not necessarily the main framework for this discussion. So, our roadmap for the rest of our discussion here is really to talk about one, reality of zero click and what do we need to do. I've branded something called the trust stack, and I'll talk you through what it is. Every business can implement it. It just takes focus and it just takes strategy. And then three, we'll have a definitive action plan that you can take with some best next steps coming out of this. So, you can really put this process into motion. So, with the new leakage that we're finding with search demand, we just alluded to that 61% of organic. You see, 58.5% of demand does leak when you have AI answers and the maps function as well as the mobile functionality coming off to the sides. And it's 58.5, not 61, because I alluded to the paid search previously. It still gets clicks, right in line with that 1 to 2% overall. Um, so what we're finding is that when it siphons off, your website is just getting the bare minimum, right? If you're not in the AI answers, which is growing and growing in popularity as queries continue to just become more and more mainstream and habitual with consumers. For instance, ChatGPT has 10% of the world's population as weekly active users, 800,000 or 800 million, I should say. You need to be in the answer or you're simply not seen. So, how do you become part of that answer? Well, there's three battlegrounds that you really have to win. One is the AI summary. We talked about that. But then this is something that really distinguishes you from, say, commerce like Amazon or big box retailers, but that map pack, right? Hyper local. Very important to be there because location. You always know where you start your business and kind of what street you on, what corner you're on. Very important. Maybe it was a decision for where you are today. Well, the map pack is essentially that online, and it needs to also be read by the algorithms as hyperlocal to where the people are searching. And then the trust layer. So this is, do you have authoritative, trustworthy content that is not AI slop? We'll talk about that in a minute. And there's a lot of dynamics that come into play with how do you lock down this trust layer. So you get rewarded with higher precedence than other businesses or just mass produced AI content, which we're going to see is very noisy right now. So with the battle for the answer, kind of picture this, but if you're used to having customers come into your business or you're used to them coming to your website and you're using that medium or the ability to interchange with them to sell them on your products and services or to create a relationship with them, when they never come to your website or to your store, how do you still convince them to do business with you? Because you can convert customers off of your website, and it's all being part of that answer. So you need to think about what are the ways I can extend my business and I can extend my sales presence and my marketing presence and my value proposition and my brand voice. I need to extend that beyond myself, right? And if you're able to do that, then you'll find that you're going to deliver a lot more transactions in commerce. So when you look at the KPIs, some of you might be sophisticated with the dashboards that you look at. Maybe it's Google Analytics or something like that. You need to change your mindset on, I'm not looking at pure traffic quantity as the barometer for success, but I'm looking for conversion quality, or I'm looking for referrals or visibility on these different platforms. And I need to know that they're higher quality, and how I'm positioning my business means a lot. So intentionality, I would say, and quality versus quantity is a key sticking point that you should remember. And when the new currency for discovery is that answer, you're optimizing for the answer. So there's actually, this is nice because there's one really foolproof play right now that you can focus on, and it's simple enough to do, but it's FAQ style content. And it's really aligning yourself to how people ask questions and try to get answers, right? So, what is FAQ content? Well, on the technical level, it's direct structured answers to common user questions. And you can embed these on your website. You can have an FAQs page. So think about all the different questions that you typically get. Maybe it's that 80-20 rule. So, 80% of my customers are asking 20% of these types of questions. Build your content around that strategy, right? So start with those most common ones and then think about what are the more nuanced qualitative ones that you can also answer. And stay steady with it. It's not just let's produce it all at once, but let's have consistency, right? So you're always making sure the content has a steady drip, because Google wants to see that your site is alive and it's not just static and sitting there. Keep the content clear and conversational, and make sure that, put yourself in your consumer shoes. How would they ask it? Make sure you mirror that language back in your answers and your structure of your website. It also does help when you're doing these FAQ style answers to include your location in the content as you write it. So again, location hyperlocal does get rewarded. So play to that. Very good. The acronym that you see, GEO, does not mean geography. Over to the right, that stands for Generative Engine Optimization. You might also see AEO in the news. That stands for Answer Engine Optimization. They're kind of the two different ways that people are talking about this right now. Geo seems to be winning, but I like AEO honestly because Geo just does sound like geography. But it's critical because it acts as training data for the AI models. So you're literally training ChatGPT and you're training Gemini and you're training Claude on your business by structuring your answers in these way. Um, Now, beyond FAQ, that's one strategy for being found. Now, has anyone really thought about or kind of understood the marketing funnel before, where it really started at awareness, then it went to consideration, then it went to intent and conversion, and maybe you had like this remarketing funnel at the end where you're trying to get back in touch with that loyalty program? Well, this is how you need to start thinking about a consumer journey now, and it's they can enter at any point. They don't necessarily have to know about your business, right? Awareness totally changes, but the awareness is now that you solve the problem that they're looking for at the immediate need that they're looking for, right? So it's this instantaneous loop where as they're learning and as they're having a conversation and they're evaluating you, it's all happening in a compressed loop, and it's happening in that dynamic that is becoming much, much more um, well, we're getting used to it, right? We're finding that we typically like finding and evaluating businesses this way. And what you can do is nurture those relationships, right? So think about, how do you structure your content, building that trust, building that authoritativeness, but then also making sure that with your reviews and the content that, others are promoting on your behalf, that helps build relationships, right? Because when I'm in sales, when I'm in marketing, I always say peer to peer style content influences at a much higher degree than maybe coming straight from my business. So you need to position folks that are actually talking about your business that are similar to your customer set in a way that influences them beyond your website as well. So as we look at the different dynamics, there's ways that we can start to tactically think about how do we check these off the list so you become the answer that AI trusts. So again, being clear with facts, right? Part of authoritative content is being educational and informative. It's not repurposing or copying and pasting a study you found somewhere else. It's, are you coming up with novel content, and something from your human intuition or your business intuition, right? Bring that forward and put that on your website. Recent proof. So I'm going to talk more about this on the following slide, but um, when you think about recency, I started the presentation talking about the only constant in life is changed. Like if I were to deliver this presentation in January 2024, the entire thing is different because the world changes so fast. So when you're talking to your customers, and you're positioning your content, you need to make sure that you have a steady drip of recent content. And you can't just be living off of your legacy content and hoping that that gets rewarded on a continual basis. And then structured answers. So a technical term I'll use here is called schema and schema markup. It's part of a website source code, and it's almost like a menu at a restaurant. So it tells the AI and it's technically called robots or crawlers, that they can go to your website and understand exactly what the content is talking about. It's a quick way to parse it. And then it can understand your website and the relevancy to the queries. So, say, same example, restaurant. If there's a schema markup that's literally made for local businesses and for restaurants. You should be utilizing those. And then it understands quickly, right, who you are, what you're about, and then also what's unique about your restaurant or local business versus all your other competitors out there. Now, on the recency side of things, velocity beats volume, right? And I want you to think about, would you trust a business that has maybe 500 positive reviews, but they were all delivered 3 years ago? Or would you trust a business that has 75 positive reviews, but they're from within the last 3 months, right? So things change, people get that, and people are also skeptical, right? And they want to see that consistency is better than intensity, right? So I'm looking for recency because I have that recency bias. And the way that you can build this up for your business is step one. This is something everyone here can do. It's just good due diligence if you haven't done it already, is complete your good Google business profile. It's that digital storefront that sits right there on the top right side of the Google search engine result page. When you do fill that out, and it's 2 times or 2.7 times more likely to be seen by a reputable customer. Now, with a business getting those different reviews, the new reviews do tip the scale. So part of the review acquisition, it can be automated by AI, and there's different vendors and different tools that you can look at that start to automate this review aggregation and collection. It's a tool that really does assist your business, and it's worth its weight in gold. I'm not here to sell Hearst products, but it's something that's folded into the Hearst ecosystem because we understand with local search and all that stuff, reviews and review management, it's a time suck sometimes. And we have tools and we have people that actually sit behind and operate those things. And then the goal is to infuse local context and expertise. So again, AI slop, I'm going to talk about it in just a minute, but it is a massive issue. But within that issue, there's a huge advantage if you're doing things that stand out, right? We're going to find that the cream rises to the top, and you want to make sure that you are positioning your business, because when you do break through, no one else will be able to keep up, right? The winner will take all, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. If anyone's familiar with executing kind of search engine optimization and search engine marketing, you might be familiar with quality score. And quality score can seem just like an acronym or just something All right. Someone told me about that in my marketing agency reporting call, whatever. But it really does have financial impact. And one of the best leverage points for your business is to improve your quality score because it does have significant cost decreases for the same types of strategies that you look to implement when you're doing things the right way. And how you can start to increase your quality score is comes down to relevancy, right? So we talked about frequently asked questions, answering people's queries, but then also what's the experience that your potential customers are having after they click on an ad or click on a link or click on wherever they're from, maybe it's ChatGPT search and end up on your website. So again, highly qualified, highly intent driven lead. What's that landing page? If they're ready to shop and buy now, are they landing on your homepage? Right? That's not the best experience. They should be landing directly on the page where they can convert or they have that contextual link to what they were doing prior. And Google sees that too, right? And that directly financially impacts your business. So again, think about connection points. Is it as seamless as possible to what the customer's expectation will be? And once you solve for that, you will be rewarded financially. Now, AI slop, probably familiar with the term. It was actually Merriam Webster Dictionary's 2025 word of the year, right? That's how much it's on our mind. And again, people are not stupid. They're not skeptical, right? So you can't game the system. And if you kind of hear people talking about it, maybe influencers are online saying, hey, you do these three things and you just generate a whole bunch of content on ChatGPT and you're golden. um, that's a flash in the pan, and they're just trying to get likes and they're trying to get views because that's their business. What you really need to focus on is value intensity over just quantity of content, right? Because 88% of people, as you see from the stat, have a hard time telling what's real and fake right now. Deep fakes are an issue. If you've played with ChatGPT and you've used their DALI, or they've changed their modes now, I think it's GPT 1.5 and Nano Banana. Um, the images can look incredibly realistic, where you don't know necessarily what's real and what's fake. And thankfully, when you're using Gemini and Nano Banana nowadays, there's a little watermark on the bottom right, and you'll be able to start to pick up on this. But you do have to do your due diligence, right? And that's turning some people off. And I kind of alluded to the value intensity before, but I call this the authority gap, right? Trust, authority, these themes that are kind of running as my main motif here. Um, you lean on your human expertise. Like, you have your own unique strengths and your knowledge set, and no one can replace that. I don't care how intelligent or how much information Gemini can return to me. It's in my ability to compose my thoughts and work through these systems that drives the real value, right? And we're going to find, as people, that's the winning ingredient. And when people are just doing slop content where they're maybe not a domain expert, they don't have the nuance of how they ask the questions and how they tee up the situation to necessarily deliver good quality content. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to use AI as a starting point, especially for brainstorming and ideation and pulling research down and maybe even doing a first pass at writing copy, but come back around and make it your own. And don't just copy and paste out of AI, because when you make it your own and you add your human expertise, Google, the algorithms, everything, even human trust, that value intensity does rise and you will be rewarded for your efforts. So, on the trust and authority side as well, the power of where your ad is juxtaposed to, or your content or affiliation, matters a lot, right? So, we talked about location, location, location. We talked about the Google Map Pack, right? Hyper local wins. This is something that you actually have as your advantage, especially against Amazon, Walmart, Target. They provide maybe a lower price and they provide a large inventory of a lot of different things, but hyper local does have a place and does have local trust, right? So when we talk about, can you borrow trust? You can. And some of you may have worked with Hearst Connecticut Media Group. Maybe you work with WTNH. Maybe you work with the Hartford Courant. Doesn't matter the media group. The same through line or halo effect runs across all, right? People trust local media, one, more than national media because it speaks local and it's talking to our actual interests and issues. And we have local reporters that are diving in and you can actually communicate with them, right? We are local, and that's the reason that people subscribe to that content, right? It's the game they play. I need to produce quality local content to sustain my business model. Now, when you run ads in juxtaposition to that hyper-local trustworthy content, you have this automatic halo effect. And this study, I'm just bringing it here, is from 2025 by PA Consulting for Reach PLC, but they found consumers find that there's a 26% trust lift in their brand perception, as well as 41% reassurance from consumers just by being around trusted media content. So keep that in mind. It matters a lot where you are as well. I'm going to distill probably a century's worth of evolution and human behavior psychology in maybe 2 minutes here, but there's three key decision drivers that influence a purchase, right? And one is emotion. I always teach this when I'm at Hearst and I'm talking to sales reps or the marketing teams, but emotions drive decisions, logic, information, all of that stuff. It can inform the decision in that gut emotional feel, or it can dissuade against it. But ultimately, the emotion is the driver, right? So you need to emotionally appeal to your customers. Social proofing. Think about yourself as a consumer. Do you ever buy things without looking at reviews, right? Google makes them highly present for your local business. Amazon has them highly present as you're looking at their list of products and services. It is a key driver, and people typically say the higher your star rating towards 5 is the best. Stats actually show that people, again, they're skeptical of perfection. So having a star rating around the 4.2 to 4.5 range is actually that ideal sweet spot where it's like, all right, no one's perfect, I get that, but you're good enough and I trust it, right? So again, that's just a little nuance in psychology that I've learned. And then two or three is speed, immediacy. So again, people want what they want immediately. You think about what's happening right now with AI and ChatGPT and what Google is. People are looking for that instant gratification for their solution. That's why this is becoming such a wildfire in terms of behavioral change. And we're trying to now just catch up. It's because speed, efficiency, and the most seamless through line for a customer's expectations to be met will always win. I'm going to use Amazon as a story again here, but that buy with one click, right? That was groundbreaking when they did that because it just added efficiency and less friction to the process. And what we're finding is that anyone that can position their business, product, services in a frictionless and customer rewarding way is going to win, right? So think about those as the different modalities of just human psychology that you need to look at. Now, trust becomes that new SEO, and I mentioned that Trust Stack. I kind of came up with this. It's my, I guess, branded thing here. But you think about a hierarchical structure or a pyramid, it can't exist unless you have the layers, right? And the environment within the bottom layer is your location, again, where you are, it's where your ads are serving and juxtaposition. So that is critical, right? You get that right, and then the rest can be built on top. Platform becomes how do you execute that? So it could be social, it could be mobile, it could be search, it could be on CT Insider, any of those different things. That's the platform. So again, environments, where are you? How is it being executed? Mobile devices, desktop, etc. And then finally, authenticity. So what is your ad saying? Is it being read with authoritative content? And, you know, is it actually trustworthy? Right? It all comes back to trust. And when we think about that, you need to have, and if anyone's heard about omni-channel or knows what omni means, but it means always, one voice, always present. Everything runs consistently across all these different platforms, right? You can't have any breakages with your brand voice and your marketing communications. So everything needs to be a consistent drumbeat that speaks and positions your business as you want it to. And you go, say, from social and search to your website to your email, every touch point needs to feel the same. So think about, do you have any breakages in the chain? Is there a link that's quite not fixed yet? How are we talking about this? This even goes to your sales staff and how do they treat leads when, people are calling in? Do they consistently talk the same way about your brand as maybe your marketing material do? So again, everything within your business needs to be centered around one, focus on what's your unique voice and value proposition and build out from there and becomes this halo effect across the entire consumer journey. Um, so this is a bit forward looking, but it's happening right now. But if anyone's familiar with agentic commerce, it's going to be the new battleground. And I think where I see the trends going in terms of marketing is the future is we're not necessarily marketing to people anymore. We're marketing to people's agents and we're marketing to basically our digital concierge that's going to evaluate and make purchases on our behalf. And as people start to trust this more often, they're going to upload their credit cards and just say, all right, go buy it for me. I don't care. Right. We're not there yet, but have to kind of think about human psychology. As I mentioned before, frictionless wins and trust wins. So what do you think is going to happen when both of those are solved for here? Now, when you have your website and your content, it's on the side with structured data, your reviews, your inventory feeds, your schema, as I mentioned. So remember that analogy I made with restaurants and that menu or local business. All that feeds into this ecosystem where the agentic commerce tools such as ChatGPT shopping, Perplexity. Just this past week, Google unveiled their UCP or Universal Commerce Protocol at NRF trade show. So this is all happening within the week. And it's all moving towards that winner takes all focus. There's one local business that I did want to kind of talk about here that I know is actually helping kind of power this agentic commerce. But I'm in Trumbull now, in the town over in Shelton. There was a business that was founded there called Logic Broker. And it's really cool to see how a local Connecticut institution just talked about their integration with PayPal and Shopify is starting to really feed this ecosystem. So again, talk about Connecticut punching above its weight. It's really cool to see that. And when we look at what is the type of content that should be going into agentic AI and agentic commerce, it's multimodal in the future. So we're leaving a text to text world and we're entering an audio world, we're entering video, we're entering images as more rich content that gets rewarded and can answer those questions and make actual conversions on your business's behalf. So think about, say, a YouTube strategy that you might have. Well, when you upload a YouTube video, it has a transcript that will populate on the behalf. And it's pretty much just recognizing how you're talking about different things and it timestamps things as well. So it's very nice. But that is incredibly rich content that can be picked up and rewarded by these AI systems. So again, part of an SEO or a GEO or AEO strategy in the future, or now, I should say, is how do we have FAQ style video content that answers your customers' questions with a degree of expertise and authenticity, right? You don't necessarily want to go on Sora or these AI video generating tools and just churn out a bunch of AI slop. You actually want to build the authenticity because, again, people can pick up on that, right? But this becomes a linchpin in an effective strategy, as well as images, right? So does your website have right tagging behind every image? So if you're familiar, there can be meta tags behind images, and you need to have really sharp descriptions of what that content or is in display in the image is, and that will then be what Google or ChatGPT or any search engine sees, and then it can pull the image in, and you're starting to see that you'll actually be served your website images within these AI chat services. So it's definitely, again, going out and extending your business beyond your business, as I made that example about 20 minutes back. It truly is that. So make sure that you are positioning everything on your website to go forward and answer those questions and be really positioning you in a strong place to convert your customers. So, with that said, that's kind of on the macro scale. I want to talk about a New Haven blueprint. So, vertical by vertical, really looking at what are the key things we should be looking at. And I'll start with home services. So, when someone has an issue, say it's 2 a.m. and your pipe bursts and you need someone to come out, well, we're finding that immediacy and speed wins the day with home services, right? And when that call now button or you're positioned right at the top is going to be there for them, there's 15 times higher revenue from that. So again, people aren't waiting, they're not evaluating as deeply with as much consideration. They just need someone to come out and fix the problem, right? So with home services, it really is winner take all. Um, I did something recently where I used the FaceTime function of the ChatGPT app, and you can literally have it look through your phone screen, like the camera, and you can talk to it, and it can understand everything in your environment and give you answers, right? So I had a plumbing issue actually last week where I unscrewed a filter in my basement and it started spewing water out, and I screwed it back in, and I was like, that was not smart. But what I could do is also say, I had an issue. This is the pipe I'm working with. Can you find a provider and give me their business address or give me their phone number? And it's positioned to do that for me, right? So winner takes all. When I'm speaking to the system, it's not going to give me a list of 10 businesses like old SEO. It's going to tell me one, right? And I'm going to call that one. Now, when we look at healthcare, 77% of individuals are now researching before they book an appointment. So again, your waiting room is really being extended into these AI ecosystems, right? So people are looking at what are their symptoms, who are the providers, what are their credentials, and they're becoming smart consumers. We saw recently that ChatGPT just created ChatGPT Health, which is a major step in this direction, as well as Google and Claude are going to be moving this direction as well. So you have to understand that everyone's going to be more informed, especially when there's a lot on the line, and you need to make sure that everything about your institution and your healthcare providers are well positioned to allow people to feel confident and book those appointments. On retail, I've mentioned Amazon a few times, but they are kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to retail. And you can beat them with immediacy. So again, location, location, location. Your inventory is your power. And when people do those near me searches, especially on the mobile devices, Amazon can get it to me maybe later today or tomorrow. I'm kind of used to that. All right, I'll wait a day. But if I want it now, that's where you win, right? If someone needs something in 20 minutes and they're close by, they're your customer, right? So position yourself in those ways. And, I talked about how do you do that? Location based pages on your website, right? You have your inventory, but you're also talking about where you are consistently and constantly, right? Now, when it comes to hospitality, images and multimodal are fantastic here. So, again, in terms of mediums that get picked up and read really well by AI and search, PDFs are not one. So if your website's using PDF images of your menu, it's not going to work very well, and the images will actually serve much more with higher prevalence. And then finally, for professional services, so you might know this acronym, but EAT, actually, it's a great combination with the food example, but experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And again, I talked about Google's core update that they just released in December, and they just cranked up the dial on. They now are looking at EAT with even higher precedence because AI slop content is becoming more and more of an issue. So when people are looking for different professional resources or evaluating different businesses, they're a longer sales process, right? So there's a lot of insights collection and gathering that's going into this process. But as people are looking for, say, who's the best marketing agency or who can do, custom app builds for my business, maybe I want to do a bit of a software play. it's going to give you good recommendations, and then you're going to, evaluate them based on different business criteria, or maybe the different systems you have in place, your CRM and all of those different things. So longer tail sales process, but people are really diving in and researching, and you need to have those authoritative content pieces that answer those questions. So as we start to bring this home here, and it seems like we're about to land right on the nose, so we can do some Q&A. Efficiency meeting empathy is critical. And I talk about human in the loop. This is a midterm election year. We're going to hear a lot of fear. I anticipate this, and people are going to be concerned about AI taking their job. That's just something that maybe you're dealing with right now internally, or you're just seeing that in the news constantly. And what I would say is that human in the loop, someone that can really drive these systems, is going to be incredibly powerful. So you think about the augmenting factor. If you learn to integrate these into your daily workflow, it empowers you. And we've done that at Hearst. I've helped empower thousands of employees by building different systems and tools and teaching people how to use them effectively and bring their best out of themselves into those systems so they can provide a better experience for their customers. And what you do, or what you can do, is, lean into these systems to be an efficiency tool, because, as you know, time is our most valuable resource. You can't buy more of it, unfortunately, but you can win more of it back by using these tools smart. And that's where I say it's fine to use AI drafting. It's fine to use AI for automation. So maybe your inbox QA, or all of these different things. Like, think about where are the bottlenecks and friction points with your time on a day-to-day basis, and then think about how can I have AI automate either a portion of that, or how can I augment myself so I can do even better at a different component of my job. Now, when you're publishing content, human empathy and review is very critical here as well. So this whole kind of linear example here of AI drafting content, you add your human flourish, and then you publish it to the web. That raises that value intensity, as you remember from that scale graphic I shared earlier today. And then finally, for a 30-day action plan, we'll send this presentation out so you can make sure you can have this. But you know, the best time to start is now if you haven't already. But really focus on auditing your Google business page and your website content. And that FAQ style content is one of the quick fixes, right? So making sure you're asking your customer questions. There's a really great website that you can go to called Answer the Public. So I'll just give you a second if you're writing that down. But Answer the Public, it's a great website where you can start to see real customer queries for different types of product services and how they're asking for things. So you can see, based on that type of demand and information, all right, what do I need to do to position my content to now go connect those dots, right? Now, with velocity, what's your review system like? How often are you getting reviews? Do you have a loyalty system in play? And how do you maintain that steady drip, right? I mentioned there are AI tools that can do this, and they can just kind of always work while you're sleeping, and just continue to reach out to folks and ask for reviews and solicitations. There's also tools that can ping you when you start to get either positive reviews or negative reviews, so you can know to answer in an expedient fashion, right? Because as people are looking at and evaluating businesses, they need to see that you're engaging with your customers, right? If you have a negative review and maybe it's erroneous and someone's really just trying to, cause problems, well, you need to answer that, and you need to deflect the pain, right? Or just kind of bring it down, because even if there is some credibility to that negative review, if you own it, people respect that. So that's, again, something that you can do that's, just good business practice. And then finally, enhancing your content. So again, that EAT principle, everything needs to be authoritative. And beyond just the FAQs, what do you have that's unique and novel, that's not just repurposed content you can find everywhere? Do you have any stats or any information? How can you put yourself out there as a thought leader in the industry? And then make sure that you're consistently doing that. And then finally, with measurement, make sure that, you manage what you measure, right? So if you don't have a dashboard, if you're not familiar with looking at these different things, then you're going to be blind to the impact, right? And you really have to get into good best practice on seeing how these changes and everything that you're doing impacts you in different directions because on adaptability, things are changing on a month to month basis and algorithms change and there's new tools, etc. You need to stay on this so you understand, what's the bellwether that tips me in one direction versus the other direction, then I'm always improving my business. So finally, for where Hearst, Connecticut Media Group fits in, they're a member of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce as well, and they can do everything kind of in their bandwidth filling wheelhouse with an agency called Local Edge that works and operates out of Buffalo, New York. But it's an agency for local businesses. And they do everything from visibility audits, so they can diagnose any gaps of FAQ style content. They can scan business schema or website schema to understand, are you speaking to these AI algorithms in the way that you should be? And then offer recommendations for the fix. And then finally, Hearst Connecticut Media Group, just being around for over a century, has that halo effect. So again, juxtaposition with that always does get rewarded. And if you're curious and learning more, it's not going to come from me. Feel free to LinkedIn with me if you want, Michael McCarthy, but I'm happy to take conversations offline. But Jeff Pickerill is your representative from Hearst at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce, and he's offering a kind of two-step offer for chamber members only, but it's a free AI search audit. We have a tool, I actually built it for the team, that does this audit on their behalf, and it really scans your website and gives you everything you need to know. And then strategic insight. So again, some more tools that I built, but understanding the dynamic forces of Greater New Haven, Connecticut, your industry, even down to your business and your competitors' businesses, and creating a SWOT analysis with an opportunity gap. So sees everything, and then it tells you kind of where do you need to go to exploit your opportunities. So with that being said, trust and authority, it all comes back to that, right? So we have the advantage, hopefully now feel a little bit more confident in the direction you can take. I would say every journey starts with a single step. So don't get overwhelmed. Focus on what you can control and just make a plan for what you can't control or find partners that can help you. So that concludes my presentation. So I'll stop sharing. And if we have some time for Q&A, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, that was great, Michael. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there's some questions. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat. Michael, I know you just shared the kind of action plan. I'm sure you find people are at completely different places with AI. What's if you haven't played around with AI yet?
Yeah.
And some of this seems kind of foreign. What's a good way to just get started?
I would say one of the best ways to get started is kind of pick the tool you like and maybe think empathetically again from your customer's perspective and just go on Google and start asking questions that you think they might be asking and see, hey, is my business showing up here? And if so, why not? So I would say Google because we're all familiar with the platform. That should be a starting place. And then these tools like ChatGPT, they're free to use. So go familiarize yourself because this is kind of the new commerce kind of modality where people are just moving behaviorally into these systems, and we're not going to see that come back. It's only going to grow. So familiarize yourself with those platforms, and you don't have to spend money to do that.
Let's go to Christina. I'm going to turn your microphone on, Christina.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say, Michael, thank you very, very, very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your candor. The really, first of all, first and foremost, I also am in the AI area. I'm a AI consultant. I actually have 20 plus years in technology, and so I shifted, right? I've been displaced about 4 times. I said enough's enough. But I do appreciate the human in the loop aspect. My company is based off what I call hybrid intelligence, which is very similar. It's about finding the right alignment between and balance between human capabilities and emerging tech. Not always just AI. What I find is a lot of people are after AI. It's the bright shiny object, right? It's the new sexy thing that we have, where AI may not be the fit, right? And so what I do is I work with companies. I've been working with the Bethel, Newtown, Ridgefield, New Milford economic development areas. Also a recent member of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce as well. Got a chance to go to the legislative forum on Tuesday, which is very eye-opening, right? We're all kind of leaning towards AI, but at the end of the day, is it really AI, right? Is that what you need?
Mhm.
Could be you can even lean engineering, right? You could be what you don't want to take a heavy process and put it into AI and automation workflow when you don't need
Yeah,
it process, right? So I
right.
think it's really about being smart how we use it.
You're
So I
right.
do appreciate. I don't really have a question per se, but I just wanted to reiterate.
No,
I appreciate where you're coming from.
Christina, can I add to that? Because when I actually teach executives and I meet with the C-suite of Hearst quite frequently and I speak at events across the country, but the principle is simple scales, complex fails. And I think when we look at simplicity, it's, one, does the tool that you're introducing to your team meet them and rise up and meet them in their workflow and work system? And does it have a simple user interface that allows for a good experience, right? So simple skills in that perspective, then also simple skills in terms of applications for your data. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for organizations right now is data integrity. And, I don't want to necessarily automate a process with sloppy data because that just creates chaos. So you'll have to see what's feasible and attainable in the short term. And then you might have to do some logistical road mapping before you can truly have some of these workflow automations that you're kind of hearing in the news right now.
Absolutely. I probably will reach out to both you and Jeff to have a side conversation because I think it's worth continuing on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Christina. I'm going to turn to Laura. You had a question?
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yep.
Oh, great. No, I just was wondering, there was so much, thank you, first of all, but there was a lot of information, and this is very new to me.
Mhm.
And you had a lot of, there was some slides that had sort of almost like a step by step, like do this
Yes.
and then do this. And there was some process. I was wondering if the presentation was going to be available for us to have, or even some of the slides would be available for us to just take and kind of work through on our own.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes to that, and I can do you one better. So, I can break down my slides into actual documents, and I can give you more context behind them. So I'll send that on to the Greater New Haven. So the slides will show you just kind of the peak of the content behind them. You think about like an iceberg, and then I can give you more content that you can kind of sit on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hmm.
And we'll also post the video from today as well. So, Michael, I think we'll end it right there. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the partnership with Hearst, but such great information, and I think it's such a great point as well. People maybe think of Hearst newspaper as an older technology, but you guys are right at the forefront, really pushing through with opportunities.
Well, thank you again, everyone. Garrett, it's been my pleasure. This has been a really fun way to start the day. So, again, anyone watching and still hanging on here, feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn, Michael McCarthy, and we can have those separate conversations. So, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be continuing our AI webinar series. We'll be back with another installment next month. But for now, appreciate you joining us today. Have a great day.